And you do put a lot of pressure on yourself, especially when you've had such a lengthy journey to parenthood, and it hits hard afterwards. And I often say that, I was expected to be my strongest when I felt at my physical and emotional weakest. I was there in hospital and I've got this baby, and I hadn't allowed myself to imagine that too much, I think, because it just felt surreal. It felt like a big mountain that I was never quite going to get to the top of.
Welcome to the Motherhood Clinic, a podcast about caring for mothers after childbirth, led by clinical experience and real-life stories. If you're a new mum and ever asked yourself, is what I'm going through normal? Should I be worried? Or who should I ask for help? This podcast is for you. It's for anyone navigating those early weeks, months, or even years after having a baby. Each episode brings together voices from across the motherhood journey, from clinicians, experts, and mothers from all walks of life. We're here to help you feel more empowered in your unique motherhood journey. We believe in a better start to motherhood.
Thank you, Seetal, for coming onto the Motherhood Clinic podcast.
That's
One
right.
of the great things about this community and the work that we're doing is you come across great people from all walks of life. Now, I'll give you a bit of an intro and why we're talking. You've had quite a journey. We'll talk about baby loss and the fertility struggles that you've had, and then the joy and hardship of, the postnatal journey. And in and amongst that, you've written a lot and now become a real advocate for this space. You've written for some pretty big names, right? So there's The Times, The Weekend, Metro, Huffington Post. You've also written for Women's Health magazine, so Women's Health UK, Stylist, Glamour, and then also apps such as Flow and Peanut, which are very prominent. So really pleased that you're coming on board. I think you've got a lot to offer for this conversation. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm going to hand over to you and Seetal. For people that don't know you, give yourself a bit of an introduction and why should they be thinking about listening in for the next 60 minutes that we chat. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Patrick. And to give you a summary of my story, it all started on Christmas Day 2015 when my husband and I discovered that I'd conceived naturally. And at this point, we'd been married for 8 years. We hadn't really been trying because of all the pressure to procreate from community, from society. I'd sort of convinced myself that I wasn't quite ready to be a mother. And I thought that whenever I saw that I was pregnant, I would be worried about the loss of independence and everything that came along with that. But in fact, I was just elated and I projected into the future, assumed I'd have a baby in 9 months, but sadly that wasn't the case. The pregnancy ended very early. And although there was no physical pain, the emotional impact of that was huge. I felt like a fraud even discussing it because it was so early. Yeah, it was very difficult to get my head around that, having been given a glimpse of something I thought I didn't want. And then I realized I did want it, and then it was ripped away. And so that was the beginning of the fertility journey. We went to our GP, as it had been our sole pregnancy in 8 years of being married, and had a bunch of fertility investigations, waited months. There was a lot of back and forth to get the results, which then revealed that I had a low ovarian reserve. So we were in our mid-30s at this point, and we were recommended for IVF. We qualified for 1 round of NHS-funded IVF, and we started that in early 2017. And when that was unsuccessful, we weren't approved for any further funding. We went private, and we chose a clinic that is nicknamed IVF Boot Camp. So if you're in the know, as they say, it's very intense. The protocols are very different to other clinics, and it can take its toll on you. It's daily blood tests and scans and lots of medication that you have to keep topping up. It adds extra stress to an already stressful situation. We unfortunately experienced 2 unsuccessful cycles there. And after that point, our then consultant recommended using donor eggs for a higher chance of success. And we were told that it would be an estimated 2 to 3 year wait at that point, so 2019, if we wanted to have a South Asian donor. And so we thought about that. We weren't quite ready to explore that route together, and we swapped clinics again. So this was our 3rd clinic, and we did a 4th and final round using my own eggs. Sadly, that was unsuccessful, and at that point we decided to explore donor conception, and we chose against using a South Asian donor because, well, there were various reasons, and we can explore those later on, but we just didn't feel that we had time to wait. We could have gone abroad as well, but everything felt very overwhelming. And then adding a new clinic into the mix, even if it's not the right fit, you feel comfortable staying where you are sometimes. And at this point, COVID was around as well. The pandemic had shut clinics down. And so there was already so much uncertainty, and we didn't want to make things worse for ourselves by leaping into the unknown even more so. So then we chose Spanish and Portuguese donors. The first cycle was unsuccessful because 15 unviable eggs were retrieved, which was a huge shock. I hadn't expected that result whatsoever. You hear so many success stories, and to then have another unexpected obstacle like that really shook us. At this point, I was questioning, should we have gone for an anonymous donation? Should we have gone abroad? Maybe I would have been a mother by now. And luckily, another donor became available, a suitable match, and we moved forward, and I became pregnant, which was absolutely wonderful. But we were cautiously optimistic, having been through everything, all the failed cycles and the loss. And unfortunately, at the 2-month mark, we experienced a miscarriage, which was extremely difficult. And nothing ever prepares you for that moment where you're told that your baby's heart has stopped beating. And at this point, we were living in Berlin as well. We left London for Berlin at the end of 2020. So we were navigating a new healthcare system, really not speaking very much German whatsoever. So it just felt that we were completely out of our depth. And we still had 2 embryos remaining back in our London clinic, and we just needed to take time out. It took 2 months to recover from the physical aspects of miscarriage. And as we were thinking about it, we became pregnant naturally, which was another big surprise.
Wow.
And again, yeah, we were numb in that moment. You'd think that we'd be over the moon, but we'd experienced so much loss, the embryo loss, failed IVFs, the miscarriages. We didn't expect it to go to term, but thankfully I had a straightforward pregnancy. And pregnancy after loss, because of the fear of history repeating itself and the anxieties, it was very difficult for the first few months, and we didn't tell anybody, which was, after you've been sharing your story so openly online, and to keep something like that to yourself, it's a different space to be in. But we needed to keep ourselves in that bubble for a while, I think, to protect ourselves. Eventually we did. And yeah, I'm happy to say that 3.5 years ago, my daughter was born in Berlin. And now we are on the other side, dealing with parenting after loss and the ways that reproductive trauma can resurface as well. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects that my story touches on, and I talk about it so openly because I want to support others primarily in this situation and empower them as well. There are choices available. There are lots of people there. You don't have to do this on your own, and there are so many resources that you can tap into. But also for people looking to support others going through this, it's hard to know what to say.
Yes.
How to behave. You want to be there for people, show up, but you don't know how. You're worried about saying the wrong thing. So sometimes you don't say anything at all. And yeah, I'd definitely like to talk a bit more about that.
Wow. Thank you, Seetal. Thank you. I take a moment because there's so much that you share.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing is to say thank you because, you've really become an advocate and you write so openly about this and talk about it so openly, but it will never be easy. But what I take from the conversation is you're doing this to allow other people that are going through this to take insight, learnings, so that they can deal with these. If they're going through it, might be going through it, or potentially in future, there's something for them to go back and say, hey, this has happened before, and to kind of take some hope from that. So again, thank you so much for sharing that. There's a lot to go back and kind of unpick and to go into more detail, if that's okay.
Of course.
There's obviously, there's a few dimensions that this whole situation brings up. There's the personal journey that you've talked about. What was that like for you, and what was the support that at the time? They said a lot of resources out there, but how easy it is to navigate those when you're going through it for the first time. And maybe no one will expect that to happen. So when you're not prepared for that to happen, how do you navigate that? Which is one thought in my head. The other part is you talked about is the whole doing that in and amongst your community, Southeast Asian community, or a new community like being in Berlin. And what are the things you would ideally like to have in place to do that? So there's a few other things that go off in my head, but I thought those two would be interesting, and maybe to go into a bit more detail and talk more about, if that's okay. So the first one, which what was that journey like to navigate, and not only your emotions with you and your partner, but also the resources and try to piece together where do you go next in this journey.
Yeah, it was really overwhelming at the beginning. I think it was a shock that we needed to have medical assistance to even try to conceive. I think I had the perception that IVF was a guarantee. You hear so many people do it, and you don't hear so much about the failures. People don't talk about that. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's sad, and it's heartbreaking. And so people tend to share their stories once they've had their babies, and they'll say, "Oh, we went through this X, Y, and Z." But it's okay. They'll gloss over it. They won't really go into the hardships and how it felt. So trying to process the fact that we needed help was difficult. And then you're just all of a sudden thrown into this world of medical jargon and appointments and scans, and you don't know what any of these things mean. And I didn't have the headspace to research it. Some people go into it armed with that information, but I just couldn't. And so I did what I was told. I was on autopilot. I turned up where I was supposed to be, did the shots, and it was only, I think, the third cycle that I started to feel a bit more familiar with the process. And yeah, I started to speak up a bit more about it to friends and family. We'd always told close family and friends, but I never went into much detail. And in terms of how my husband approached it, I was talking to him yesterday as I was preparing for the podcast, and he said he just locked himself away emotionally because I was so overwhelmed that there was no space for him to say, "I'm also struggling with this. I'm going to just put my emotions on hold. We'll deal with that later. And I'm just going to be there for you." Because, I was breaking down when the medications were delivered. I was questioning whether we needed to do this. And he was the one who administered the first injection because I was petrified. After that, I became a dab hand at it, as you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very difficult. And in terms of resources, we weren't really given much. I didn't know what was out there. There weren't any leaflets. No one said there's an online community. There are support groups that you could drop into or attend online anonymously if you prefer. Here are some books or podcasts. You were left to your own devices. So I didn't really know what existed until, I don't know actually how I came across the Trying to Conceive community on Instagram. I think I was just in one of those rabbit holes. And then I remember listening to a podcast, the Big Fat Negative podcast, and being in my lounge and just laughing and crying, feeling like I'd found my tribe because people were talking about how I felt. And I thought, that's it, me too. I'm not alone in this. And from there, I discovered more stories and I absorbed them passively. I wasn't quite ready to put myself out there, but it gave me a lot of hope and a lot of strength to know that I wasn't the only one in this really difficult situation. And how is it now? I think things are very different. I mean, I'm very involved in it, so sometimes it's hard to step out and see it from the point of view of someone who is just starting their journey. But I would say that there are more and more advocates from different backgrounds as well, which is wonderful. I've sadly seen a decline in South Asian men talking about their journey, which I'm not sure why, actually. It would be nice to look into that a bit more and understand. And I think a lot of people as well, even though they share their story once they have their children or they've ended their journey without a baby, they then delete their accounts or just, they pivot because it's a difficult thing. Every time you talk about it, you relive that pain and the heartbreak, and sometimes you just need to move on. I think draw a line under it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think as we go through this discussion, we're really keen to signpost those resources that get flagged. So, the Instagram accounts that you've mentioned or the communities you're part of, we'll make sure that those are clearly outlined in the description so people can reference those that you think have helped you in your journey and that you're actively a part of. I wanted to ask about the role of community. We've talked in previous podcasts around the role of both online communities and obviously your physical communities. What was that like for you? How valuable were those communities?
They were key, both of them. I feel very fortunate in terms of the physical community, being able to talk to my own parents, my family and close friends. And then also my in-laws were very supportive, which is not always the case. And I think that adds a lot of pressure as well. If people don't know what you're going through and then, they're making these comments, they're asking questions about when the baby will come. And, it just makes you feel even worse than you already do. I mean, I remember feeling like a big failure as a wife, as a woman, a daughter-in-law, daughter on every level. So it was good, really reassuring and comforting to have that support. But there's a limit to what you can say as well as you're trying to get your head around and process everything, and people want to say the right things, and they try and be supportive by saying things like, okay, relax and be strong. And especially in the aftermath of a failed cycle, you can keep going, never give up, and they'll give you the success stories as well. And it feels like you're not being heard, you're not being seen. And, you put yourself out there, you're being very vulnerable, and you just sort of, have to back up a little bit and protect yourself, I think. So, yeah, having people that were able to hold space. For example, my best friend was a great support throughout all of this, and still is, because I can say everything that I'm feeling and it will never be minimized. And with the online community, it really felt like a tribe of people who understood. There's nothing quite like talking to someone who has been through a similar journey. And although no two journeys look the same, there are enough elements, I think, that are similar, that you feel comforted and you feel held, I think, virtually. And for me, it continues to be a great source of support. And maybe it's not for everybody, but some of the people I connected with early on have become my best friends now. We meet in person
Really?
whenever I go back to the UK, and they
Great.
also we have similar timelines, which is a great coincidence. So we've gone on to have children through donor conception, IVF, naturally,
Yeah.
surrogacy. And we can kind of compare notes, and it's nice to be able to talk about the hard elements of it as well as the positive, because that's another aspect of it that's difficult to discuss. So you've gone through all of this, you have your baby, and you're expected to be happy about it all the time. But parenthood is difficult, regardless of the path you took to get there. And
Yes.
sometimes you don't want to have to preface that with, I'm so grateful, and I know that people are struggling. You just want to say, God, I haven't slept properly for 3 years, and
Yeah.
I'm really finding that hard. My body doesn't belong to me anymore, etc. And it's
I
nice to
think,
have those conversations with people who are also in that boat.
yeah, there's a really important point I want to pick up. As you mentioned, there's pregnancy after loss, then there's having the baby, and then obviously where the Motherhood Clinic is focusing is the postnatal, like after the baby's here.
Mm.
And we know that so many women go through, whether it's the baby blues or postpartum depression, and that sense of what you feel you should do, right? And I've talked about this before, where you know, you haven't slept in months. Life is just crazy. You've got this newborn baby, you have no idea what you're doing. And, you're telling yourself, other people are telling you, but you're also telling yourself you should be grateful. I'm so lucky. Look at me. Like, look at everyone else that hasn't been. And I think it's so easy, I imagine, to put that pressure on yourself when actually you feel like absolute crap, right? And I'm saying this as the man, right? I mean, I had I wasn't good for this, but I think it's just a very important point to highlight, this sense of what you should be feeling and how you cope with that. Because yes, I guess to a certain extent you are fortunate and you are, it is great that you have
Mm.
this, but that doesn't mean you should feel happy all the time because that just wouldn't
Yeah.
be natural, right?
No, and you do put a lot of pressure on yourself, especially when you've had such a lengthy journey to parenthood. And
Mm,
it hits hard afterwards. And I often say that, I was expected to be my strongest when I felt at my physical and emotional weakest. I was
right.
there in hospital and I've got this baby, and I hadn't allowed myself to imagine that too much, I think, because it just
Mm,
felt surreal. It felt like a big mountain that I was never quite going to get to the top of. And so you do what you need to do. I think you just get your head down and you focus on that cycle, on recovering from that loss, and I'll try again. And I think even though I did see a therapist during the miscarriage, the months after the miscarriage, there was probably still a lot that I needed to process and navigate. And all of that resurfaced once my daughter arrived. And I didn't expect that.
mm,
Because it was really hard, actually, coping with the sleepless nights, and breastfeeding was a challenge as well. It took me a long time to establish my supply, and trying to do that, like I said, in Berlin, where you don't really know what you're doing either. So it was
yeah.
yeah, it was a double whammy of not knowing what I was doing as a parent, and then how do I find my way around this system in a different language as well. So yeah, it was
Wow.
hard.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
things to juggle. What
Yeah.
was what did you find were things that could kind of pierce through that that dark patch? What was helpful? What were the things that you kind of like you held on to that brought you through those times, do you think?
I think speaking about it, with other friends who were parenting after loss as well, Yeah, definitely one of my friends when I was going through the breastfeeding struggles, I was sending her voice notes and messages on WhatsApp saying, this is brutal and I don't know how to get myself through this. And we would tell each other, encourage one another one step at a time, just take it 1 hour at
Mm,
a time. The next feed, focus on that and what help is out there. My midwife was wonderful and she was so gentle with me. And that
mm,
is definitely what I needed in that time afterwards. Because like you said, you heap the guilt onto yourself because you feel bad for crying. Why am I crying? My dreams came true. And I
mm.
was getting messages from everybody who was invested in our story. And they were saying, enjoy every moment and you must be on cloud nine. And,
Yes.
I'd think, yes, but also no. This is hard. I've got no support apart from my husband, and neither of
Mm,
us know what we're doing. And our families did come over for a short time, but it wasn't like they were there every day. And so that can take its toll as well. And yeah, I think same with pregnancy after loss. It was just taking it one step at a time and trying not to project too far into the future and worry about things that haven't happened yet.
yeah. There definitely is this analogy that we've personally gone through, which is you see the birth as the finish line, right? There's this big
Mm.
marathon to get pregnant, and you invest all the money, and you do all your research, and you go through the IVF cycles to get pregnant, and then you finally have it, and you're like, I've done it, and you're like, oh, we're there, we've finished, we've crossed the
Yeah,
finish line. You're like, that's not the finish line, like that's the start line.
that
Now
is
now
just
it's
the
like
beginning.
now,
Yeah.
and there's no end to this bloody race because it's like. And I can understand that mindset. I absolutely can empathize with that because that is your goal. Your goal is to have the baby and a healthy one at that, hopefully.
Hmm.
So when it finally arrives, you're like, right, we've done it. And everything else from there, we'll figure it out because that's your most singular, tangible
Mm.
goal. And as you're saying, people recognize that in you where she's done it. She's finally, that's great. We're so pleased. But then you're like, well, hang on a minute, I'm not finished. And then there's this very big outward celebration as there should be around, hey, this is fantastic, the celebration. And then that's kind of where, you close the doors and you've had the baby, you've had the big celebration. And then life begins. And
Hmm.
then like, hold,
Yeah.
hold on a sec. Like I wasn't ready for this. So I think
Yeah.
it is that shedding more light on that part of your life immediately after you've had, hopefully a healthy birth is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really challenging. And I think it's too often, I think, forgotten about by everybody, right? Because you're
Yeah.
just like, that's all you're concerned about, which is let's just get to this
Baby.
finish line, which is not a finish line, it's a start line. But
No. As you were talking there, actually, there were a couple of things that came to my mind.
mm,
And one of them was Keira Knightley recently spoke on the Happy Mum, Happy Baby podcast about all of this. And it's a
okay,
fantastic conversation for anyone who finds themselves struggling, or if you just want to learn more about it from the mother's perspective. And she
right.
is honest about sleep and the effects of sleep deprivation on her marriage. And she speaks about the concept of just motherhood, how everything changes and you're not really prepared for that. I think on an intellectual level, but you can't really know until you're in that
Absolutely.
situation. And
Mm,
she's way more articulate about it, but she says that she recommends like a period of mourning. We call it matrescence, right? The like adolescence, like the phase of becoming a mother. And it's great
mm,
to hear more conversations about that. But it is a process and it does take time because you're shedding the person you were before. Your life
hmm
is not the same. And I think it's okay to grieve that and mourn that because things have changed. And just because you worked for this so hard and now you finally become a parent doesn't mean you're not allowed to look back a little bit wistfully and, remember what you had and who you were. And I think people need to give us grace. We also need to give ourselves grace for
mm,
what we've been through, how we adjust. I think there's so much pressure to just make that switch. Like now you're a parent, off you go. Like you said, the dream has come true, and everything is expected to be smooth sailing, but it is not that simple at all. And
yes.
it does depend on the support you have available as well. And the other thing was that I wish that I had seriously considered hiring a doula to
Mm,
support me through that postpartum phase. I did look into it, but I never got as far as contacting anyone or really understanding what it was about. In our culture, we have that. If I'd been living at home, I would have spent the last month of my pregnancy at my parents' place being taken care of. And then when you come home from having had the baby, you've got people on hand to take care of the baby, and you are given special drinks to boost your supply, special food that will help you to recover physically as well. And you get that emotional support too. Like, look, baby's asleep, you go have some sleep. We'll take care of
Yes.
your laundry, all those things,
Yes.
You don't need to worry about cleaning. That I remember that being really difficult as well. Life continues, and you're really struggling to find a new routine as well.
Yes.
So a doula would have been wonderful.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. That first month or two support that we get, and what does that look like culturally and generationally? We spoke to someone, obviously in traditional Chinese and heritage, they used to have this well, they still have this idea of confinement, and for the first month, I'll probably get it wrong, so forgive me, but I think it's the first month or
No.
first 100 days where the mother eats certain types of food that's easy on their digestion, and then later on builds up things like quite rich in collagen. And there's a lot of beliefs, some grounded in science, some more intuition, some in more cultural heritage about what you should and shouldn't do. But I think the core part of it is that you have a support network around you, and the understanding that the mother should be cared for as much as the baby, whether that's those close-knit ties that you have with your mother or your mother-in-law that are physically close to you, or people bringing you food, for instance. And I think one thing that this touches upon is the different types of support that you can offer in that time, both as you calling out what you think you need as the mother, but also someone like myself as the person caring, or someone that's seeing someone going through, whether it's early pregnancy, whether it's a loss, whether it's fertility struggles, or the birth of a new baby, like the different types of support you can offer, and how you can, as you said, how do you show up in the best ways? And there's a conversation we can have here about maybe the helpful and less helpful ways of showing up. We all know it's well intentioned. I'll start with one example where, let's go back to the days when, that time when you'd had that loss, and the first thing I know that people I've reached out to with the best of intention, and a typical example is, hey, really sorry to hear what's happened, or whatever it is. Let me know what you need, right? It's nice that you've got people that actually,
Care.
give a shit enough to actually say that to you, right?
Basically, yeah.
But actually the challenge with that is it puts the onus on you as the person going through the stuff to say, it's up to you to then say, I need this, but you never will say that.
Yeah, can you drop some food around? Can you make me, a pasta bake or something?
Let's talk a bit about, how does someone looking in, like me, how can I show up in the best way? And how do you articulate what you think you need?
Yeah. It is always with the best intentions, I think. I've never felt that anyone has said something to me with malicious intent. Maybe that is the case for other people, but I try and keep that in mind. But at the beginning, it was very frustrating to hear things like all the platitudes. Just relax, it'll happen. Things that I touched on earlier as well. It's okay, you can try again. You're still young. I mean, in our case, we were in our mid to late 30s. But people hear that, in the aftermath of a loss, at least you can get pregnant, which is really not very comforting when you've just lost the pregnancy. And ultimately, whatever people say, I know they mean well, but it lands very heavily because it minimizes what we're going through. I feel that it's very dismissive. It often felt like I was just speaking into thin air, that people, speaking to a brick wall, basically, because they weren't listening. And then you stop talking because you think, this is not somewhere that I feel safe. And everyone has their limitations. And over time, I learned that there are certain people that I can gravitate towards that will hold that space, and I'm going to focus on them. And for the others, I will respond. I will update them on what's happening. We can talk about it, but I shouldn't expect too much. I think that's what it comes down to, just changing your expectations of people. Especially within family as well, because as I said, we had support on both sides, but sometimes that can be too much as well. People wanting to know what's happening when you're not ready to talk about it as well, and all of these platitudes. So that was challenging. And the things that have been helpful, I think it is just something simple like saying, I'm sorry you have to go through this. It looks really hard. Tell me about it if you want to talk. I'm listening, and that's what it is. And a lot of people have said that to me as well when I've asked, what has helped you going through these fertility struggles, and what has stood out for you? And it is that people who can just listen, don't talk, hear what they're saying, acknowledge what they're saying, maybe reflect that pain back as well, that God, that, really does sound hard. How are you coping? What's
Yeah.
helping you through this? Yeah, taking your lead from them, I think. What people need is very different. Like we said yesterday, there's no one size fits all solution.
Mm.
And what I need today may not be what I need tomorrow as well. I may react differently depending on
Yeah.
my mood or whatever updates I've had from the clinic, etc. But
Yes.
ultimately is just, I think, listening to people and knowing people as well. I was talking to my husband about this, and he said that something that's really important to remember is your relationship with that person and knowing them. So
Yeah.
the example you gave yesterday of calling someone at 9 a.m. every day for, let's say, a week or 2 weeks, pick up if you want to talk. If you don't, that's okay, no pressure. That would work for one person. For someone, that might feel like pressure,
Yes.
because they want to be left alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and for other
Exactly.
people, it might be as simple as just sending some emojis. I think that's worked for me. A few hearts, and just to let someone know that you're thinking of them, and there is no pressure to reply. Even if sometimes people write, there's no need to reply. You still probably think that you need to acknowledge that because you took time
Yes.
out of your day to think about me, and it's lovely. But if it's
Absolutely.
just emojis, I think that's another level. Yeah, you can just step back a little bit and accept that.
Yeah. There is a journey that I imagine you're going through in these periods where it's that own self-discovery, because you yourself, as you said, might not know what you need.
Mm,
Obviously I can't relate to that obviously from a motherhood perspective, but those times when, you've gone through those dark phases in your life where this is the first time it's happening to you. So you're discovering what you think you need. So even you're like, hey, I don't know what I need. Like, let me know what you want. I don't know what the fuck I want. Like, like, and as you
I
say,
don't
each
know.
of
Yeah.
those relationships are so different. So what one person can say could be the same as someone else, but it's interpreted and seen differently. And I think it's
Mm,
that recognition that there is no, I think you can say it's all got to be on an individual basis.
mm,
And what you mentioned was something that was the Simon Sinek example was, in his case, what he found example was he was speaking to someone that just lost their mother. And the way that he held space for them was saying, look, I know you're being inundated with calls. I know you'll be inundated with people asking how you are and what you're doing. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to call you every day at 9:30, and don't feel the need to pick up. But just know that if you want to chat, I'm there for you. And I think for the first week, they didn't speak. And then afterwards, it was a 5-10 minute conversation here or then. And that was a good example that he raised. But as you said, that might be just someone like really annoying me for like every night day. I was like, that bloody phone call all the time. So
put it on
I think it's
silent.
just, the idea is
Yeah.
it's intentional, is you working out with that person how the best way to show up. And there'll be those people that can provide very great emotional support, the people that are
Yeah.
great listeners. My wife will tell me if I am or not, right? But there'll be other ones that may be
It's a
more just really
skill.
practical. Yeah, exactly. It's a skill I'm still learning.
Mm,
And there might be other very practical support, where it's like, hey, I'm not the best listener, but I might just send some food vouchers, some cook vouchers your way, so that you don't have to worry about cooking. When it's an unrelated thing, but when we had a health incident, a while back, and one of our friends was like, look, I'm doing some cooking. I'm gonna chop it by yourself, chuck it in the freezer. It's gonna be about a month's worth. She didn't even ask us if we wanted it. She just showed up one day
brilliant.
and like, here's a bunch of food, stuck it in your freezer. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, it wasn't. She didn't have to go through, how are you? How's it going? Da, da, da. She's like, look, here's some food.
Just do it.
Don't worry about it. Just put it in the fridge. And I was like,
Mm,
looking back, and oh, how thankful, how great was that? So there's different
yeah.
ways that you can show up in different, for people like that, which
Yeah.
I just
Very
thought was
much so.
interesting to reflect on. You don't have to be maybe you're not the best listener. That might not be how you show up,
Yeah.
but there could be other ways, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. No, you're right, actually. And yeah, sometimes you just do it. I think you don't want to add any more pressure. You don't want anyone to feel obliged, to get back to you, etc. Just show up in a way that you feel will be appreciated, like that. People need to eat. So something
Yeah,
that that person enjoys, or yeah, food vouchers if you're not a great cook, or send a clean around. I talk about that a lot because yeah, that's
amazing.
something that yeah, it just it's a big burden, isn't it? Cleaning, no one enjoys that. Let's be honest. Or if that person doesn't want to talk, let's go and have an experience or something, and then not speak about this for a little while, and come back to
Mm,
it when you're ready. I don't know, a wine tasting or an art class or something like that. Go to a concert. take yourself
Great.
out of that.
Great. I wonder if we take a moment now and talk about what that experience was like, you know, at work as well, because this is also a big element. We've talked about your personal journey and how you've navigated that, what it's like with your friends and family and your community. But another big element is your work journey. And, you know, to provide some context for this part of the conversation, there's whenever you go through these kind of challenges, whether it's birth or other, how you handle that at work. And again, there'll be an element of people that you want, people that know about what's going on, how do they show up? There's probably elements of you wanting to keep a level of privacy about what's going on, but then handling that. So it might be useful. And I know that you're a big part of fertility at work, and you went to, you went to a conference recently and you talk about what this is like in the work context. So I think it might be helpful to talk about some of those insights or those situations and what was that like for you. So I wonder if we shift over and talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, for me in the workplace, I was always very fortunate that I was able to approach my line managers about this, and I was nervous about it. There were never any policies in place at that time, but it was a conversation I wanted to have so that they were in the picture about what I was going through, and if my performance dipped slightly because I was distracted. And the first time I spoke to my line manager, a woman, what I didn't expect was her to then say, "Oh, how exciting!" and she was
Hmm.
thinking about freezing her eggs, and she said, keep me posted and whatever you need, and I don't know
Okay.
much about this, but if you're
Right.
happy to kind of walk me through it, and we're there to support you. Honestly, it was the best sort of reaction for me.
Okay.
And then in other workplaces, I had a lot of flexibility to attend
Hmm.
appointments, especially when I was at the first private clinic where I was required to attend every day. Having an employer who understood that and allowed me to work remotely and maybe juggle the workload, take some of it off me, for example, reschedule meetings, that really, really helped a lot. Especially when I felt like I was all over the place for a long time. And so not
Hmm.
having to worry about work was a great relief. Now, for some people, they like to have that distraction of work and they like to keep their identities separate as well. And, I would see
Yeah.
a lot of women in particular in this clinic on laptops and taking calls, and it was
Hmm.
business as usual for them. Maybe they needed to, maybe they wanted to, but I personally found it easier to just focus on what I needed to do medically and not think about work.
Yes.
And later on, I think the only time that I felt really nervous about talking to my employer about what I was going through was when my line manager was on maternity leave, and it was a small team. It was just her and I. So I was sort of holding down the fort with a bit of external support, and I had to go to the MD and the CEO of the company and say, "Look, I'm going to be starting fertility treatment myself, and I can give you a bit of a timetable, but certain things are unpredictable. I will keep you in the loop, as soon as I have that information." Yeah, and I felt nervous about how that would impact me and how they would see me and my future within that company as well. But both of them actually, again, I was pleasantly surprised because they talked to me about their own fertility struggles, how they'd
Okay.
suffered loss as well. And so it was a really nice conversation. We connected differently. And
Hmm.
it was nice to know that I did have that support. And by and large, I stuck to that timetable and it all went well. But because I've been so open about this on social media as well, my colleagues, when they would come up to me, for the most part, I'm happy to talk about it. But there were days where I just felt very heavy. I felt that burden and that weight on my shoulders and on my heart. And to have to talk about it, you're really grateful that people are engaging, that they want to learn more, they want to be there for you, but also, how do you have these conversations without saying, today, can we just not? Can we push that to
Yeah.
tomorrow? And that can be difficult to navigate as well. And then my most recent experience was in Berlin, and I actually flew back to London for my transfer in the same week that I started a new job. And that was
Wow.
really challenging because I hadn't been vocal about what I was going through, but because
Yes.
it was online, I didn't know whether my line manager had looked everything up. I just said I had to go back for medical treatment and it was
Yes.
pretty urgent and it would be about a week, but I'll be online and available as much as I can. And then when I went through the loss, again, there were no policies in place, no official bereavement leave. But she was wonderful. She really prioritized my well-being and said, look, we won't go through any official channels. Stay in touch every day. Just let me know what you need when you're ready to work. If you want to, that's great. If not, tell me what can be done. If you don't feel that you're strong enough to do a handover, we'll figure it out. It's a small team. It's not important. And I felt really valued as a person. And that helped me to just, I think, heal in my own way without feeling pressure to rush back to work and not risk my job. And so like what we said, people need different things. Sometimes you just don't feel comfortable talking to your line manager as well. So the Fertility Matters at Work organization that you mentioned, they've recently published some research about the number of people who don't feel comfortable. I think it's about 60% or so. Yeah, 63%. And they're taking sick leave to hide all these appointments, and
Right.
and that has a cost impact on the business as well, to the tune of about 217 million.
Wow.
So it's a really important conversation to be having in the workplace about how you can support, not just in terms of implementing policies, but also the culture. How do you create a culture of compassion? Because
Yes.
most people, you will go to your line manager first, and you need to feel comfortable and safe to do so.
Yes.
And how do you make employees feel that way? I think raising awareness, having fireside chats, getting employees who wish to share their stories, publishing that on the intranet,
Yeah.
having kind of fertility buddies as well, just someone that you can talk to in confidence who's been through something similar. I think that's really very, very supportive.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. And it sounds like I'm glad to hear that you had a really supportive line manager. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
But as you've also raised, is not everyone will have that or feel like they have that, and that's a hard thing to gauge. Like, do I have it? Do I not have it? Because again, it's the first time that you're talking to line managers in that way, right?
Yeah.
Because you've never had that conversation before, so you don't know how good they're going to
No.
be. They don't know how they're going to be, right? So, what's your view? In your view as an advocate and someone that's really campaigning in this space now, are you seeing a shift in workplace towards recognizing this more? Is there still a long way to go? Could they do more? Like, what are you seeing at the moment from the work that you're being exposed to in general?
So at the event last week, the conference, so it was the F Word Live conference, where there are a number of panels with employers who have implemented these policies and discussing what they've done to make their employees feel psychologically safe and to support them on their family building journeys. It was great to see how much has been achieved, how
Yes,
fertility friendly a lot of these big companies are. I don't know if I can name them. Would that be okay?
of course you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all available online. You've got, companies like Cadent Gas, Ferring Pharmaceuticals, Selfridges as well. So many of them, Eon, have been recognized for all of their
Right.
efforts in different ways. And in a lot of cases, it started by employees writing a blog post about what they'd been through, and
Interesting.
getting that overwhelming response from other people saying that they'd been through it, and how nice it is to see, especially senior management figures talking about their own journeys. Because I think it's one thing for an employee to talk about it, but if you get that buy-in and that support from the C-suite, then it really just, I think, validates everything and makes it easier for people to come forward. I think line managers as well. So it's one thing to have the policies and then the culture, but you need line managers to be trained, because I think something like
Yes.
80% of them don't feel comfortable talking about it, because
Yeah.
if somebody comes to you and says, I'm struggling to conceive, I'd like to have a family, they're obviously in a very vulnerable space. And how do you hold space for that? And try and be professional as well and reassure them. And you're uninformed. What if there is no policy? What do you say? Like, I need to check on that and speak to HR.
Yeah.
And it can be quite awkward, I think, and that sets the tone for what's to come as well.
Yes. I think the positive thing I take out is we live in an age now where, as you're saying, the individual can garner a lot of support and power in businesses. As saying, starting from a single person writing a blog, a lot of I've been at a few big places, as in like just size wise. But they've developed these community groups within the business. So women at, or, etc. And so they start to generate that level of support and then demand that then gets onto the C-suite agenda because so many people are asking for it. But it starts from, a little flame that someone just saying, hey, look, this is what I'm going through, and having the courage to share that, as you did as well. And I think because of the world we live in now, that has a lot of value. And I think unlike before, where you didn't really have much of a voice, you didn't have a platform to get this voice out there, right? So that's one thing I think is really positive about the world we live in today. And then secondly, I guess employers are recognizing that because it's very much a part of their value proposition to employees.
Yes.
Right. So I've previously done work with other companies where they're looking at maternity policies or just policies in general, because they recognize that it is so valuable to people wanting to join them. So yes, obviously pay and your compensation is going to be important, but the support and the attitude and the culture of the business, which is so readily advertised now, whether it's like Glassdoor and all these places where people have a much greater insight into what it's like to work at these places from people that have been there. And part of way that many businesses are now differentiating themselves is actually what they provide and these policies, and do they have these functions that provide support in these ways, which I think is great, because I think so many more businesses are alive to that, which I think is creating hopefully a better culture or ushering these things.
I was just going to echo that actually, because there's a lot of work to be done, but it's so reassuring to see so much good work being carried out. And, Fertility Matters at Work in particular, it was founded by 3 women who had their own challenges and have gone on to support others, support workplaces, raising awareness. And you're right. My own story started with a blog post on my food blog. And I used to review London restaurants. And I have a Spotlight on Chefs series where I spoke to 40 plus British and international chefs about not their journeys, but just, what they loved and what makes them tick and what they dislike, etc. And when I wrote about this, I didn't know where to put I didn't actually write it with the intention of sharing, but my husband read it and he said, I think you should, because we know people going through this and, they haven't even felt comfortable telling their parents because there's so much shame and secrecy surrounding fertility issues within South Asian communities, and put it out there, help other people like they've helped you through the TTC community. And so that's how it all started. It was a small action, and everything that I've done since then has been intentional, and it's snowballed from there. And it's, I'm so proud to have been able to turn this pain into a purpose to help other people as well. And that's often the case. I think all these movements start because someone has been through a difficult experience and doesn't want anyone to suffer in the same way, face the same challenges, just to know that they're not on their own. And I think there's great power in that.
No, I think it's great. And I think it's hopefully inspiration for anyone listening in as well about what can come from a small action. And there's a lot of those themes that you've mentioned which come up time and again around shame, around asking for permission and acceptance, surrendering. We hear a lot of this, and the value of accepting, even embracing, this time and what you're going through. And I mean, one of the main reasons we started the Motherhood Clinic is, we went through our challenges. When we found the time and the space looking back to talk to other people finally about what we went through, you're like, oh yeah, we had that too. I was like, oh, and not in such a glib way, but you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize. And the moment you open up, you realize behind closed doors, everyone has an element of these, and you realize, oh, I wish we'd known, and or I wish it would have been helpful, knowing that other people are going, you're not in this alone. And when it happens to you, it is just happening to you. It is your very personal journey. It's a very private journey that you don't necessarily want to share with the world. No. But when you do find the courage and strength to share with other people, you realize, oh, it helps to, I don't want to say normalize well, maybe it is normalized. It is like, oh wow, this is not just me, it's other people, this happens to other people too. And there's a great value, I think, to doing that, and to finally breaking that perceived barrier around what you think should happen. And, because you only see, as you say, like you only see the success stories and the lovely people running through wheat fields and, having baby clinics and, it's all wonderful. But yeah, behind that, everyone has an element of it.
I'm acutely aware that I am also seen as a symbol of hope and as a success. What a mouthful that is, as a success story. But I struggle with that, and especially the term rainbow baby, because my daughter is a baby born after loss. And,
Right.
I feel that that can be quite dismissive and reductive as well. And it's a lovely idea, the sunshine and the rainbow after the storm. But everything that I went through on the path to having her has shaped me. I think it shaped me as a woman, as a person, and as a mother as well. And I wouldn't. Yesterday, I was asked on a live that I did, what would you change, if anything, about your journey? Of course, there are many things that could have been tweaked, I guess, but I wouldn't actually change anything, because then this is the path that led me to my daughter, and I wouldn't have her. And I am leaning a bit more into spirituality and the universe, and life unfolding in the way that it's meant to. It would have been nice not to have gone through any of those failed IVFs, and it is all very intense, and God, it's an emotional roller coaster, and they don't call it that for no reason, but it is part of the journey. And yes, it's a very tough space to be in. So if I can help others by sharing my story, then yeah, it's something that I'm definitely very happy to do so. But like you said, normalizing conversations. You don't have to go on social media and tell the world about it. You don't have to write about it or go on a podcast. You can just talk to your best friend. You can talk to your parents, whoever it is who can hold that space and that you feel that you can trust and confide in. And that is also enough, because then that person may say me too. They may talk to another person, and that's how we get closer to opening up all these conversations and reducing the stigma around them.
Great. I think it's a very empowering sentiment to say, yeah, I wouldn't have changed a thing because I wouldn't be the person I am right now. And to, again, it's that level of acceptance of and embracing, like, hey, everything I've been through has got me to where I am today. And that's a very empowering way to look at the past and where you are right now. So thank you, Seetal. This has been a really helpful conversation. There's a couple of things I'd like to do just to round out the discussion. We talk about this idea at the Mother Clinic of a better start to motherhood, right? So I'll put you the question. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. What would,
Okay.
Given the conversation we've just had, what does a better start to motherhood, what would that mean to you? What does it
What
mean
would
to
have
you?
helped me?
Yeah.
Depends when we're starting, because to me,
True.
it's not so much when the baby arrives. It started many years before that. Information, I think, having access to support to enable you to feel empowered to make informed choices. That would have made a big difference to me, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt very lonely at the beginning, and we know that we're not the only ones going through this. And, I've got family who, my own mum suffered a loss in between myself and my brother. My gran also suffered losses. I have cousins who've donated eggs and done IVF, etc. So we've got examples of all these different paths to parenthood and all the struggles as well. But, you know, a lot of people say, whatever the situation may be, if you find out that you've got a health condition or something, for example, you think it happens to other people. You never expect these things to happen to you. And that very first loss I had, I remember seeing a poster in the hospital saying 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. And until that day, I was a stranger to that statistic. I just thought, how is something so common and we're really not speaking about this? And, this was early 2016. It's not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we have
Yeah.
made great leaps forward in that time. But, why are we still encouraging women not to say that they're pregnant for 12 weeks, or, they're not comfortable talking about it just in case? But if the worst were to happen, you haven't told anybody. And where is that support then for you? You're left feeling even more isolated, I think. So I've probably gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but
No,
yeah,
it's fine. It's fine.
I think, yeah, so just information at the start and support if you are going through struggles. And then once, yeah, to prepare for the baby, I purposely didn't read too much into it. I did try to prepare, but I didn't want to get into my head too much and, become really anxious about it. But I do wish I'd read a bit more about breastfeeding as well, how to give myself a head start with that, setting up support for the first month for sure. That 4th trimester was very, very hard, and it could have been easier by knowing what support was out there for me, especially in Berlin as well.
Great. So I'm hearing information, awareness, and education, and then preparing for that first month. The doulas or
Yeah.
the things that you want to, just so that you've got an easier ramp into
Yeah,
the
actually.
beginning of the lifelong race that is
Yeah, the
motherhood,
place,
right?
exactly. The place we lived in before didn't have a big freezer section. It was just that one shelf. And I really wish I'd been
Really?
able to batch cook. That was one of my, yeah, regrets, I think. Maybe we should have just bought a small freezer and done that. And that would have helped a lot. And actually, that's when because I used to do meal planning and the food shopping, and I really enjoyed cooking. But yeah, once the baby arrived, I quickly realized that's not going to happen, at least not in the
Yeah.
immediate future. And so that's when we started with HelloFresh, actually. And 3.5 years later, we're still going. And, support looks
Okay.
different for everybody. It's,
Yes.
it's not a solution that works, but, it allows us to cook from scratch. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sita. And the last thing I wanted to do is to give yourself a chance to promote the stuff that you're doing. And again, we'll include the links as well. But please
Yeah.
tell people, for people that are listening in, that have taken value from this conversation, where they can find more from you, from the stuff you're doing, fertility at
Mhm.
work. Like, just give a quick plug for all the stuff that you're doing, please.
Okay. Yeah. So the best places are Instagram and LinkedIn. So on Instagram, my handle is at Seetal Savla, just my name, and the same on LinkedIn as well. And in terms of partnerships, I mentioned a live I was doing yesterday, and I've recently partnered with the medical travel company who are offering an integrated UK-India fertility model for British Asians specifically to overcome the systemic issues that we face in the UK when accessing IVF. So we're talking long wait times, limited selection of ethically matched donors, and high costs as well, especially if you're going private. And by offering this solution where you can have your consultation in the UK with a consultant gynecologist, liaise with the clinic of your choice in India, all of which have been vetted by the UK team, you can then go out there, have your treatment, have some holistic treatments as well. They have a whole range of wellness treatments, and come back to the UK and have that continuity of care, go back to the same gynecologist, and everything is regulated and safe. And I think I wish that had been around when I was going through
Mm,
my journey as well, because I think sometimes it's wonderful to have support, but it also gives you that option of going away 2-3 weeks. No one needs to know about it. They might think you're just going
mm,
on holiday, and you can really just focus on yourself, on your relationship, be there for one another, do the treatment without any external distractions, let's say. And
mm.
yeah, I'm really proud to partner with them to give British Asians the opportunity to get closer to building the family that they dream of. And yeah, I will definitely give you the link for that to put in the show notes too. And there's also one more thing. So the last cycle that I experienced where I was pregnant and then sadly suffered a loss, all of that was documented in a 13-part video series on Instagram, and they're short episodes just talking about preparing for the transfer, going back to the UK, what it felt to do that alone as well in a pandemic, and
Mm.
then finding out I was pregnant, and then sadly going through the loss and coping with grief. And also, I'm very proud that there's a Q&A with my husband, so we get to hear from him his perspective of what it was like to support me through it, how it felt to be a partner going through loss as well, because everything sort of happened physically to me, but he was also there feeling kind of helpless on the sidelines. So there's a lot of value in that series as well, and I'm really glad that I had the support of Ferring Pharmaceuticals to make that. And that's on my Instagram on the Reels section.
That all sounds fantastic. Thank you, Seetal. It's you have a very powerful story, and I think all the more power for sharing that, I think. So again, thank you so much. We'll make sure we promote those. But again, it's been great to chat. Hope we can do this
Thank
again.
you. Likewise. Yeah, I hope
Uh,
so. I mean, yeah, we'll see what the feedback is, and if there's enough content for part 2, I'd be happy to do so.
Perfect. Thank you, Seetal.